This is Marshall here from Marshall's Racing. Together with Amateur MX Magazine, we're going to give you a ride height tip. We're going to start off with the tools that you're going to need. A hammer, a punch, tape measure, and a marker. First step we're going to do is we're going to take a measurement from the center of your axle to a 90-degree angle from the floor to your rear fender. We're going to write that measurement down, which will be 620 millimeters. Next step is going to be take the bike off the stand, have the rider now sit on the bike. Okay, with the rider sitting on the bike with his butt in a neutral position, which is usually a little bit behind the foot pegs, and the reason we recommend that is a lot of times as riders get tired is when they normally complain about their problems that they have at the rear end of their bike, and they're usually sitting forward on the bike, so we always do ours this way. Now the next step is going to be take a measurement again from the center of the axle to the marker point on the fender. That measurement now should be 100 millimeters to 105 millimeters difference from your first measurement. So if the first measurement was 620, we want this measurement to be 520 to 515 millimeters in that area right there. Okay, now the next step will be to go around to the shock side and loosen your preload locks on your shock and turn it either counterclockwise or clockwise depending on what ride height measurement you want to get. If the measurement that we need is greater, meaning that if your ride height was 110 millimeters, that means we need to put more preload on the spring. In order to do that, you will unlock the lock preloads and turn the spring clockwise, putting more tension on the spring. Rule of thumb is every 3 millimeters, every turn, would be 3 millimeters on the ride height adjustment. So now we're going to go over and watch the preload adjustment. Okay, now we have to go in and on all the new current bikes with the aluminum frame, the perimeter frame, it's really hard to get in, but you're going to loosen off the preload spacer. Okay, now he's got the preload spacer loosened. Now you're going to go in and turn on this one, and we're going to turn the spring clockwise, which is going to put more preload on the spring. We're going to say we need about one turn, which is 3 millimeters on this. Now we have the lock nut. We're going to recheck the ride height again. Pause it. Okay, now we're going to put the rider back on the bike, and we're going to recheck our measurement to make sure that we do have our intended ride height. We're going to measure again from the center of the axle to the point on the fender. It looks like now that we do have our required ride height on this bike, which is 102 millimeters. Now that this is all done, the rider will get off the bike, we'll turn around to the other side, and always make sure we do the lock ring and lock it again. Okay, now we're going to do the final step, which is tightening up the lock ring. Now that the lock ring is set, you should be ready to go out and ride. The rule of thumb that we have with ride height is about every other time you ride your motorcycle, you should always check that, because the frame does stretch and every component, your linkage and everything actually moves a little bit, and ride height can change, and ride height is very important. 2 millimeters off on your ride height could be the difference of winning or losing a race that day. One thing that we recommend at Marshall's Racing is whenever you get new suspension revalve or component work done, that we require you to check your ride height, because it's not always locked together with your lock nuts. We usually leave it loose, knowing that you have to have your ride height done. That is a very important step of going racing that day. And again, thanks to Amateur MX Magazine and Marshall's Racing, that is your ride height tip of the day.